Hi, I am Daniel Mejia. Hi, I am Daniel Mejia. This is my first official vlog, and I'm going to be giving you tips and advice on how to pass your sets. Just a quick background, I am a college student at the University of the Philippines, Diliman, taking up BS Math, and I'm about to go on my second year after this quarantine. Before coming to UP, I took up STEM in Ateneo for senior high. I took up 3 college entrance exams, UPCAT, ACET, and DCAT, and I also took up 1 scholarship exam, which is the DOST. I also took up 3 senior high entrance exams 2 years before that, for the Ateneo, Salle, and UST. The reason as to why I had to point out that I took up the senior high entrance exams is that, quite frankly, the scopes for the senior high entrance exams and for the college entrance exams are quite similar in terms of their topics to be reviewed. Well, sure, for the college entrance exams, you'd have to review senior high topics, but for the most part, the topics that you'd be covering for senior high and for college are just quite the same. In doing something, you need to have a purpose. For me, a year ago, I realized that taking the sets is a big factor that will influence my future and what I'm gonna grow up to be, really. I knew that the sets were really important, so I tried my best to review as much as possible because I wanted a great future. I'm going to be giving you tips for pre-sets, the time before you take up your actual sets. I'm also going to be giving you tips for each school, UP, Ateneo, LaSalle, and also for UST. And I'm also going to give you a bit of The first step that I want to give is you have to make a checklist of requirements. The first step that I'm going to give you is really important, and this is making a checklist of requirements for each school entrance exam. This is quite important because you could allot more time for studying during the school year rather than rushing your requirements and taking up the actual sets. Hindi ka rin masistress about the deadlines for submitting your requirements because you'd be focusing on studying rather than actually doing the requirements. Secondly, you have to reflect on how you study. This is important so that you know how to approach your review for the sets and how you could fully capitalize and be efficient in reviewing for them. You should take note of your strengths and your weaknesses. Say, for example, you're bad at math but good in English, so you should probably allot more time in studying for math rather than allotting this amount of time for English. It may also be helpful to jot down what you want to happen within the year of reviewing for the sets. Say, for example, you want to be better in trigonometry, in balancing equations, is like geometry and projectile motion, all those sorts of topics. It was helpful for me because it gave me a more concrete idea on what I want to achieve and what I should improve on as I try to review for the sets. I realized that it may be helpful for me to have a disciplined routine when it comes to studying. So starting summer, I tried allotting at least an hour a day. Yeah, I know summer is supposed to be allotted for resting, for playing games, for going about your free time. Since it was for the sets and I knew this was important, this is an important stage in my life, I didn't want to pass out on it with a mediocre performance. So I inculcated in my mind the mindset that, hey, I'm supposed to be doing well for this. I'm supposed to be preparing excellently for the sets. Allotting at least an hour a day was sort of a perfect balance during the summer for studying and also for whatever you want to do. It was important that I was trying to grab as much information without sacrificing too much fun that you're supposed to have during the summer. Now, this is really important. Try to create a checklist of topics to study. Now, this gives you a more concrete idea on how your progress is. It gives you the ability to track your performance in studying for the topics that need to be reviewed for the sets. And it gives you an idea on how well you fare for each aspect in the set. Say, for example, for math, for science, for language proficiency, for Filipino. It gives you an idea on where you are standing academic-wise. This is important so you could identify where are your weak points, where are your strong points, which topics you should allot less time to, and which topics you should allot more time to. It gives you a fuller understanding of where you are, and I think that's important, most especially in reviewing for the sets. The It's also important to note that there are lots of resources online, maybe on Twitter, on Facebook, or on the Google Drive link. There are lots of information that you could extract from the internet. You could also check out YouTube channels such as Khan Academy, Crash Course, Organic Chemistry Tutor. There are all sorts of YouTube channels that are there to help you academically and help you prepare for the sets. If you're not really a digital learner, there are PDFs and documents online in which you could print and write out. Grabbing these opportunities of learning is quite important in reviewing for the sets, but I believe getting too much of these resources may lead to demotivation, which is something you don't want to have in your preparation. So I think just keep a right amount of resources for yourself. Try to keep at least like one PDF for this certain topic, two PDFs for that certain topic, so on and so forth. Thirdly, if you needed a sign to sign up for a summer review, you should probably take it. Taking up summer review classes is quite helpful in guidance for reviewing, especially when you're bad at self-studying. There are teachers in those summer review centers that will help you figure out how to review, help you how to study these lessons, and they will give you helpful techniques on how to approach problems, on how to solve these certain equations, these certain questions. In relation to online materials, there are also simulation exams available online. Now, these are designed to help you experience what it may feel like when it comes to taking the actual sets. So this is important to consider the pressure that you'll be receiving, consider the time limits that you'll be facing in the actual sets. Consequently, this would give you a better idea on what to expect from UPCAT, from ACET, from DCAT, USD, and all other entrance exams you're going to be having. When I reviewed for the sets, there were lots of simulation exams available online, and a few of them I was able to utilize, and it was really helpful for me because it gave me a better idea on what to expect for the questions, on like how are they going to give the multiple choice questions, what is the format for this certain problem. As early as now, assuming you're watching this during the summer, you should try to practice the simulation exams. And I got a few tips for you. One, you have to practice shading circles. It may not seem as important as studying the actual lessons, but it is quite important because it's gonna give you a better understanding of how time-consuming shading circles are. As a tip, you should probably just slash your circles for the answers rather than shading them right away whenever you answer a question. This gives you more time to answer more questions, and it's going to give you more space to actually review other questions in depth rather than scouring through them fast because you had to shade the previous circles in full every time you answer a question. You should also try practicing speed when it comes to mathematical problems. For me, I really practice my mental math and how I approach certain mathematical problems. I know it's not the most exciting approach when it comes to reviewing, putting yourself under a time limit, especially when it comes to solving mathematical problems. But I guarantee you it is quite important because it can be time consuming to answer mathematical problems with a slow approach. So as much as possible, you want to go for them fast but surely. It's also important to figure out strategies on how to approach word problems, because in a way, word problems in simulation exams may be really similar to the ones that you'd find in sets. Now, if you get used to a certain format of a certain word problem, you'll say, okay, this is the word problem that I had before. Maybe I could apply the same strategy for this question. In this way, you're given more time to actually solve the problem and a lot less time to trying to figuring out what kind of problem this is. Also, don't overlook reading comprehension. It may not seem as complex as math or science, but it still definitely holds a big percentage of your sets. The best tip I could give for you for reading comprehension is trying to read the questions first, then try to skim the passages right after. Now, in skimming the passages, you're supposed to do them fast but surely. And in reading the questions first, you get an idea of what kind of answer you're looking for in reading the passages, rather than reading the passages first without realizing what you're trying to look for. It's like trying to find a needle in a hay. It's also helpful to research on how long each test is in the sets because it gives you a better understanding on how much time you're allotting per item. for UPCAT, it might be more difficult than it already is for people who are not that knowledgeable of the Filipino language or who don't have a good foundation on their mother tongue. The questions are written in mostly English, but Filipino also takes a huge toll or a huge part of the exam. Let's say percentage-wise, it's 55 to 45, English and Filipino respectively. Reading comprehension is quite long and difficult as well. Again, read the questions first before going through the passages, but sometimes there are some instances wherein you'd be forced to read the whole passages because the question asks for what the gist is or what idea it's trying to convey. So you'd be forced to read the passages in full, but do so in a fast manner, but surely. Also for UPCAT, your UPG, your university passing grade, I'm sorry. Your UPG, the grade that you're going to be dependent on for your admission to the school is composed of 40% from your grades 9 to 11 grades, and 60% from the actual UPCAT. For ACET, I feel like it's really important that you're good in math and language because these are the first two main tests that you'll be taking in the exam. For language, or namely language proficiency in the exam, it's about 100 items in 60 minutes. And when it comes to mathematical proficiency, it's 60 items in 60 minutes. With this in mind, you have a concrete idea of the amount of time you're supposed to allot per item. So for English, you're supposed to allot a maximum of 36 seconds per item. And for math, a minute per question is the maximum amount of time allotted. It's also important to note that in the language proficiency test, you're also going to be having an essay with a theme that will be given right in the exam itself. So if you're still scratched about your essay writing skills, please do catch up on that one so that you can have an advantage over it. The ACET also has time pressuring subtests right after those two major tests. Namely, you have your logical reasoning, your abstract reasoning, your numerical ability, your vocabulary, your reading comprehension. I'm not sure if I covered all, but those are some, if not most, of the subtests you'll be having for after the two major tests. To give you a background on why those subtests might be time pressuring for most, if not all, the takers, is that abstract reasoning has 30 items for 5 minutes. So it gives you an idea on how time constraining it will be to answer each item carefully. It's sort of around 10 seconds per item max. So you have to do well when it comes to time pressure, and as early as now, with that information in mind, please do practice under time limits and pressure yourself and try to answer as fast as possible, but surely. In my experience, the topics for UPCAT and ACET aren't as updated as when it comes to DCAT or, from what I've heard, USTET, but that doesn't make them any less difficult than they already are. In DCAT, there are topics from senior high that are quite evident in the exam. Say you have your oral communication, your research, your statistics is not as evident as it was in ACET or UPCAT if they had any. It's also important to note that the math is divided into two tests. You have your math, and you also have your statistics. If you're lacking in information when it comes to statistics, research, or oral comm, it's really worth noting that you should really go back to your senior high topics and review them because they're gonna cover a bulk of items in the exam. For the DOST Scholarship exam, my main takeaway was that it contains topics that weren't taught in high school. They have two tests, namely mechanical technical tests and non-verbal reasoning. For mechanical technical tests, it's mostly composed of questions that made you try to comprehend the relationship between physics and mechanical parts such as levers, gears, electrical wires, pipes, motion behind flowing. For non-verbal reasoning, they were composed of questions that tried to make you figure out what kind of shape it's going to turn out if you're shown the various sides of it, or if it's turned out or rotated to be in this kind of form, what would it look like? Is what among the four choices is not part of how it's going to turn out or what it's going to look like? So it's sort of a visual spatial ability. It's trying to figure out how you understand the way objects rotate or the way objects are combined together to make it look as it is collectively. So those two tests aren't exactly what you'd find in the scopes of the other three entrance exams. So that's what makes it difficult for it, as it is. It is really important that you should check out specific review materials for the DOST scholarship exam, because in those review materials, it covers topics for those two tests that I talked about earlier that aren't found in the other review materials for the sets. That's about it for the tips that I could give you for the entrance exams and for the scholarship exam. It's really a matter of time and effort that you're allotting in preparation for these exams. And I feel like it's quite important that you allot motivation, determination, and lots of effort into this, because A, you're doing your future self a favor, and B, getting admission from your dream school will be a big factor in molding out who you would be in the future. So it's important to realize now that, hey, these sets aren't a joke. It's just gonna be a once in a lifetime opportunity. Well, aside from appealing from them right after, but as early as now, please do make a big leap, a big step in trying to pass these sets, because they're important, really, and you'll be doing yourself a favor a year from now or two. That's the time that I can give you for now. If you have any questions or comments that you want to leave down below, please do so. If you have any specific questions that you want to talk about privately, you could also try to message me on Facebook. I'm going to be leaving a link down below. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you real soon. Keep safe and God bless.